Hello everybody, it's Willie from the Ozarks, and we're ready for our January the 2nd lesson in A Course in Miracles workbook for students. Lesson 2 in our workbook, I have given everything I see in this place all the meaning it has for me. I have given everything I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place, all the meaning that it has for me. The exercises with this idea are the same as those for the first one. Begin with the things that are near you and apply the idea to whatever your glance rests on. Then increase the range outward. I didn't really emphasize that yesterday, but we're supposed to, look at the things close to us first and then increase our range to things further away and apply the idea to what you see. The very fact that you see it's all that matters. You don't want to make any kind of selective processes other than you see it. You might even see some things that you actively don't want to think about or talk about or tell yourself that you have given everything that you see all the meaning it has for you. But what we want to do, we don't want to exclude anything. Okay, no exceptions is the only rule. Increase the range outward. Turn your head so that you include whatever is to either side. If possible, turn around and apply the idea to what was behind you. Remain as indiscriminate as possible in selecting subjects for this application. Do not concentrate on anything in particular, and do not attempt to include everything in an area, or you will introduce strain. Merely glance easily and fairly quickly around you, trying to avoid selection by size, brightness, color, material, or relative importance to you. Take the subjects simply as you see them. Try to apply the exercise with equal ease to a body or a button, a fly or a floor, an arm or an apple. The sole criterion for applying the idea to anything is merely that your eyes have lighted on it. Make no attempt to include anything particular, but be sure that nothing is specifically excluded. All right? So we can do that. I've given everything I see all the meaning it has for me. I remember the same thing we did yesterday. Start with things close to you, though, and say, and we don't have to stop. Remember, these lessons are ones that we encourage you to do in all the different places you find yourself during the day. And just, you don't have to close your eyes to do this lesson. Matter of fact, we have to have our eyes open to do this lesson. And if you can't see because you're blind, well, then you do it with your mind. And just everything that your eye looks upon, say to yourself, I've given everything I see in this place all the meaning it has for me. I've given this leather coat all the meaning it has for me. I've given this shirt all the meaning it has for me. I've given these glasses all the meaning that they have for me. Let's look around and see what you all are seeing. Same thing as yesterday. I've given that peach tree all the meaning it has for me. I've given those dead bamboo shoots all the meaning they have for me. There's some new ones coming up, and they've given all the meaning that they have to me. I've given those cedar trees behind me all the meaning they have for me. So what we want to do is get really good today, just as we do our don't have to take any extra time. Just, I encourage you to write the lesson on a index card and put it in your pocket. I write it down every morning. And I have given everything I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place, all the meaning that it has for me. And then just throughout the day, if you forget your lesson, pull your card out and look at it and remind yourself. Or if you do use your phone for that, make sure you can get to it easy and quickly. And don't have to get on internet to look that. Make sure you've got it to where you just can find it immediately, no matter where you're at. All right, that's the idea. So that you can apply it to all the things you see during the day. Okay, now we're going to take a look for a moment back in chapter 1 and in the text. And I know there's some of you all that have already been through the book, this would be a nice time to review on your own. You don't have to do what I'm getting ready to suggest, but if you want to reread starting in chapter 1, I'm going to give everybody some time to get the first 11 chapters. We're ready for chapter 12, what we studied in 2021. Now here in 2022, second day already, and welcome for all you new students and your older students and anyone that wants to come along and get a little encouragement. Welcome. Glad you're here. Okay, so I want you to start reading in chapter 1, and the first section will be Introduction to Miracles. That's the name of the chapter, Principles of Miracles. And the way that they're numbered in here, I think you'll find there's about 53 specified miracles. In the blue and gold book printed by Foundation for Inner Peace, where this is the original edition printed by the Course in Miracles Society, they're numbered a little differently, and so the principles would specify about 53 as you read it in here, 50 in the blue and gold book. The reading is whichever book you have, read it. But if you're trying to follow along with me, be sure to get the original edition, and then you can follow along with me that way. But even if you have the other version, go ahead and read chapter 1. And let's start with the Principles of Miracles, and I think it's about 11 pages long. So it's a pretty good long assignment. But have fun reading it, and take a day or two and try to really understand it. It's going to start off, there is no order of difficulty among miracles. One is not harder or bigger than another. They are all the same. All expressions of love are maximal. And I'd love to just read it along with you again, but I think for the sake of everybody working together, it'd be better to go ahead and, since we read it last year, up till chapter 11, or up till ready for chapter 12, I'm going to let y'all read those on your own, and then we'll read out loud the rest of the year through chapter 12 through the rest of the book. We're also going to read the Manual for Teachers, which we're going to start today with the introduction. So go ahead and take a look at Introduction to Miracles, and tomorrow we'll talk a little bit about some things that you might have encountered there, some things that I might want to draw a little specific attention to. But so anyway, if you want to read that, and you don't have to do that, but you can just listen to me and do the meditations, and you can get it that way. But it'll make it a little easier to understand the latter part of the book if you'll read this first part first, so I'm trying to say. So this is giving you some time, and while you're getting caught up, if you're and haven't read it, or while you're reviewing, if you've already read it, we're going to go into the Manual for Teachers. And like I told you yesterday, a lot of times I encourage people to start with the Manual for Teachers. And the reason why is because it's written in a question and answer format, and so it'll start off with who are God's teachers. Of course, it'll start off with the introduction, which we're going to read today. But look at these questions. Let me just read down through the content so you get an idea of the questions you're going to get to answer. Who are God's teachers? Who are their pupils? What are the levels of teaching? What are the characteristics of God's teachers? And he lists them, and which I just love. They're all based on trust. That's the bedrock. That's the foundation of all of God's teachers' qualities. And he's going to really get into that and develop it. After trust, there's honesty and tolerance, gentleness and joy, defenselessness, generosity, patience and faithfulness, and open-mindedness. Open-mindedness being the last characteristic that's usually developed in a teacher of God. To be so open-minded that you can see the miracle quickly. How is healing accomplished? Is healing certain? Should healing be repeated? How can the perception of order of difficulties be avoided? How can the perception of order of difficulties be avoided? Remember our first lesson in Principles of Miracles is there's no order of difficulty? We're going to build a lot on that idea, all right? How can the perception of order of difficulties be avoided? Are changes required in the life situation of God's teachers? How is judgment relinquished? Good question. How is peace possible in this world? How many teachers of God are needed to save the world? What is the real meaning of sacrifice? How will the world end? Is each one to be judged in the end? How should the teacher of God spend his day? How do God's teachers deal with their pupils' thoughts of magic? How is correction made? What is justice? What is the peace of God? What is the role of words in healing? How are healing and atonement related? Does Jesus have a special place in healing? Is reincarnation true? Are psychic powers desirable? Can God be reached directly? What is death? What is the resurrection? So there's some questions that we're going to be going through. That's the content. This is a fairly short manuscript, the Manual for Teachers. So we're going to start today with the introduction. The role of teaching and learning is actually reversed in the thinking of the world. The reversal is characteristic. It seems as if the teacher and the learner are separated, the teacher giving something to the learner rather than to himself. Further, the act of teaching is regarded as a special activity in which one engages only a relatively small portion of one's time. The course, on the other hand, emphasizes that to teach is to learn, so that teacher and learner are the same. It also emphasizes that teaching is a constant process. It goes on every moment of the day and continues into sleeping thoughts as well. Paragraph 2. To teach is to demonstrate. And this was on the very first page. It's actually page 1 of the Manual for Teachers, which is in the 3-volume book. Maybe I should have made this more clear for the ones that is new to the book. The Manual for Teachers is the very last of the 3-volume set, the text being the beginning, the workbook being the center book, and the last book being the Manual for Teachers. So we're reading the introduction, first page in the Manual for Teachers. Paragraph 2. To teach is to demonstrate. There are only 2 thought systems, and you demonstrate that you believe one or the other is true all the time. From your demonstration, others learn, and so do you. The question is not whether you will teach, for in that there is no choice. The purpose of the course might be said to provide you with a means of choosing what you want to teach on the basis of what you want to learn. I like that. The purpose of the course might be said to provide you with a means of choosing what you want to teach on the basis of what you want to learn. You cannot give to someone else, and this you learn through teaching. You cannot give to someone else. Remember, all you give is given to yourself. And this you learn through teaching. Teaching is but a call to witness, to attest to what you believe. It is a method of conversion. This is not done by words alone. Any situation must be to you a chance to teach others what you are and what they are to you. No more than that, but also never less. 3rd paragraph. The curriculum that you set up is therefore determined exclusively by what you think you are and what you believe the relationship of others is to you. In the formal teaching situation, these questions may be totally unrelated to what you think you are teaching. Yet it is impossible not to use the content of any situation on behalf of what you really teach and therefore learn. To this, the verbal content of your teaching is quite irrelevant. It may coincide with it, or it may not. It is the teaching underlying what you say that teaches you. Teaching but reinforces what you believe about yourself. Its fundamental purpose is to diminish self-doubt. Well, the fundamental purpose of teaching is to diminish self-doubt. Teaching but reinforces what you believe about yourself. Its fundamental purpose is to diminish self-doubt. This does not mean that the self you are trying to protect is real, but it does mean that the self you think is real is what you teach. I just love the way he thinks about those things. Listen to that again. This does not mean that the self you're trying to protect is real, but it does mean that the self you think is real is what you teach. 4. This is inevitable. There is no escape from it. How can it be otherwise? Everyone who follows the world's curriculum, and everyone here does follow it until he changes his mind, teaches solely to convince himself that he is what he is not. We're in a wild world, aren't we? Where we're trying to teach ourselves what we're not. And everyone does it until we change our mind, he's saying. Herein is the purpose of the world. What else then would its curriculum be? Well, into this hopeless and closed learning situation, which teaches nothing but despair and death, God sends his teachers. And as they teach his lessons of joy and hope, their learning finally becomes complete. And the last paragraph, 5. Except for God's teachers, there would be no hope of salvation, for the world of sin would seem forever real. The self-deceiving must deceive, for they must teach deception. And what else is hell? Hell. This is a manual for the teachers of God. They are not perfect, or they would not be here. Yet it is their mission to become perfect here. And so they teach perfection over and over in many, many ways until they have learned it. Should we read that again? This manual is for the teachers of God. Okay, these teachers, are they all perfect? No. Well, look what he says. They are not perfect, or they would not be here. Yet it is their mission to become perfect here. And so they teach perfection over and over in many, many ways until they have learned it. And they then are seen no more, although their thoughts remain a source of strength and truth forever. Who are they? How are any chosen? Or how are they chosen? What do they do? How can they work out their own salvation and the salvation of the world? Well, this manual attempts to answer these questions. If so, doesn't that? And our first one we're going to read is, who are God's teachers? So we'll read that tomorrow, and it's fine to read ahead, and we'll read it again together. On the other hand, you don't have to even pick up a book. You can just listen to me if you want, and you will get everything if you stick with me long enough. I'm not going to go back on what I taught last year specifically in the same depth, or at least I'm not going to read each word like we did up in the text. We will in the workbook for students, and of course in the manual for teachers, and in the chapter 12 on in the text. We'll try to get all that done this year. All right, out loud together. So in the meantime, I want to encourage you, do the lesson. And as you're doing that lesson, if you're a new student or an old student, do try to preserve after your lesson a little time for quiet. I realize that's not something that Jesus specifically is telling us to do, but I'm encouraging you to, particularly the students that have been through already, be sure to keep alive what you've already gained. You know, these times of quiet where you've learned to go into the silence and regain your composure, your peace, your clarity, your sanity, your oneness with God, your self-realization. Be sure to keep that quiet space alive. So even new students, if you'll spend just a minute, maybe 5 minutes, whatever you feel comfortable. If you're practiced in meditation, can do it comfortably, spend as long as you want. I encourage you to spend as much time in the silence as you'd like. All right, now before we read the lesson once again and do one more practice with it, I'm reading out of the Seed Savers Exchange. I'm really excited about this catalog. It's the largest non-government seed bank in the United States. So I like that. They're located up in Iowa, and of course, you know, they're using seeds they've exchanged from all over the world. And one I want to talk about, an ice cold weather plant in dwarf blue curled Scotch kale. It's a Brassica oleracea. Gorgeous, finely curled blue-green leaves hold their color even in severe cold. Uniform, low-growing plants are 15 inches tall with a 20 to 35-inch spread. Very hardy. I like that about them. Will overwinter with mulch in zone 4 and 5. That's way up north. You know, I'm zone 6 here in the Ozarks. Ornamental, so zone 4 and 5, quite cold. It says it'll overwinter. ornamental and delicious. So you can use it for an ornamental or for or deliciously eaten. That's the kind of ornaments I like, ones you can eat. High in vitamin A. It's a 53 to 65 days from transplant. So there's your dwarf blue curled Scotch kale. Now, one last time, let's go take a look at our workbook lesson. And I want you to take this with you today, and just throughout the day, when you're whatever you're doing, if you're cooking in the kitchen, if you're laying down in your bed, or if you're sitting at your desk, if you're driving in your car, just without any effort. And if you got someone that's doing the lessons with you, all the better. You could even say it out loud. You could say, I've given everything I see in this place all the meaning it has for me. Might make a nice conversation too. But even if you don't do it in that way, just do it silently, which is, which is probably the best way, particularly if there's people that don't understand, or you don't want to make people feel like you're trying to take over their space. But I have given everything I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place, all the meaning that it has for me. So be sure to do that lesson. And was there anything else I wanted to share? There is one more thing. I'm reading out of Mark currently, and I just love this passage out of Mark 14:36. I wrote it on the ceiling of my wall, another version of this verse, and it was what Jesus said when he was praying in the agony of the garden before his crucifixion. He says, "Abba, Father," Daddy, Daddy, Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me, yet not my will, but your will, but what you will. Okay, and that's out of Mark 14:36. Not my will, but what you will. That's the prayer of a man who sees the strife between the perception of the world and the ego's perception, and the self, the Holy One, the one that's one with God, that the true will. So Jesus was saying, don't let my ego take control of this day. Your will be done. All right, so we want to do this. All right, so again, I've given everything I see all the meaning it has for me. I've given this head all the meaning it has for me. I've given this hair all the meaning it has for me. I've given that branch all the meaning it has for me. I've given that little occidentalist, I forget the name of that bush, but it's not doing so well. I've given all the meaning it has for me. I've given this grass all the meaning it has for me. I've given that gray sky all the meaning it has for me. So you continue on, and until tomorrow, just practice well, and do spend a moment or two in the silence every morning, and as soon as you can when you awaken, and right before you retire, spend at least a moment thinking of God. All right? I have given everything I see in this place all the meaning that it has for me. Thank you all for joining me.